Have you ever driven by a construction site of a new building and been amazed by all that goes into that construction before the finished product is complete? Or maybe you've been at your home and thought about, what would it take to add an addition on the back of my house, or just do some major remodel there? Hi, this is Living in Longview, a show about City of Longview government and services. My name is Shawn Hara, and today we're going to be talking about how some possible changes to the city's building and fire codes could impact you as a resident. We're joined today by Fire Chief J.P. Steelman and also the Director of Development Services, Michael Shirley. Thank you both for being with us today.
Thanks for having us.
Sean.
So first of all, let's talk about the role of the city when it comes to a building project, any kind of construction project that's taking part in the City of Longview, and why we have our building codes, our fire codes, and how that impacts the resident. Michael, we'll start with you. You know, that's a lot of times where the building projects will happen. Why do we need these kinds of codes?
Well, the building codes, what they do is they provide a minimum standard for our construction industry to follow, and it's based on national standards to make sure that we're building a safe and reliable project for our citizens, for Longview to be a sustainable community.
Okay, good. And Chief, obviously this impacts fire as well, and you guys are a part of the building process.
Sure.
And when somebody's looking for a permit, tell us about your role in that process.
Right, the fire codes came about just through years and years of trial and error, basically, and unfortunately, a lot of times hard lessons had to be learned for someone to say, oh, we should have had some safety measures built into the building to begin with to have minimized the potential loss or hazard to life.
So the city already has some building codes in place, but what's being proposed is looking at updating those codes. Michael, if you could just tell us a little bit about what prompted the city to evaluate a newer code family for the city.
Well, we occasionally look when there's a new code family published. We look at those to see and evaluate if it's appropriate to upgrade. But we did receive an audit last year through the Building Code Effectiveness Grading Schedule, or BCEGs as they're commonly referred to. And what that does is they come in and audit our building department and look at how effective are our building codes, how current are they. They look at a number of other factors such as our processes, internal processes, our inspection processes. They look at staffing levels, they look at education, and certification levels, and they really look at the whole picture of how effective we are as a community in the whole process. And then they give us a grading, and our previous grading was a level 3, and it's based on a 1 to 10 scale, 1 being good, 10 being not so good. And so through that audit process, we took a pretty significant hit on our building codes because we're currently under the 2003 International Code Family, and so those are published every 3 years, so we're several cycles out of date. And so if they were to have published our scores based on our current building and fire codes, we would have taken a very significant hit. We would have slid to a 9, which is not good at all. But what they did indicate in their correspondence with us was that they would hold off on publishing our score if we felt that we were going to try to maintain that level 3 that we had. And so we responded that we were going to go through the process of updating our building codes, go through a real stringent public outreach and education process, and that within 12 months we would hope to go through that process and at least either update our building codes or know that we were going to stay with the same building codes that we were. So they held off on publishing that to give us that opportunity.
When you're saying they, talking about the organization that we're working with, this isn't a Longview only type situation. This is something that communities across the United States deal with, and you said even internationally, right?
Correct.
And what is the organization that we're working with on this?
Well, it's the ISO who is the overall organization, and they have different sections. What we're dealing with now is through the BCEG Building Code Effectiveness, but there's also a community grading score that is more related to the fire codes and a lot of our community infrastructure that goes in to that. But it is the ISO organization.
And from a resident's perspective, why is it important for us to not fall to a 9 on a scale of 1 to 10?
Well, as it relates to the BSEG grading, that can factor in with new construction. When there's new construction and insurance rates, that can factor in whatever the BSEG score is when that's constructed, whether it's residential or commercial. There's a factor given. If you slip scores on a community level as well, it can affect overall community insurance rates as a whole.
So the rate that I pay at my house for my insurance could be impacted because my overall insurance score for the community has fallen.
Correct.
Okay. And from a fire perspective, why is it important that we continually look at updating these codes when the international codes are upgraded?
The codes are actually updated on a 3-year cycle. So, and a lot of that, the driving force is because the construction methods change over time. New materials come out, they become available in a certain area, and buildings are being built differently. So it's important for the codes to monitor some of the effectiveness of those construction techniques to make sure that we've got good, viable buildings that are being built, good, sound buildings.
So what are some of the changes specifically that we would see if we're going from, you said the 2002 codes to which set of codes would we be going to, and what are some of those changes?
We're currently in the 03 code family.
Okay.
And so some of the main changes on the construction end of it, the big significant changes that we've seen is on the residential framing side. Some of the techniques and methods are going to be drastically different. Some of the losses that they've seen, and the code changes are based on losses as well that we've seen nationwide over the previous review cycle, dealing with the construction method of some of the attached garages, some of the framing methods, some of the span tables as well, dealing with the types of materials as the chief alluded to, the types of materials that we use in the South. Some of those have different span tables associated with them. So that's probably the most significant changes, is dealing on the residential framing side of things. Some of the other code families that we're looking at on the electrical code, there are some things dealing with arc fault protection that are being strengthened in the code, and some other minor tweaks there as well.
Mm-hmm. And again, may seem a little, I guess, out of reach for a lot of people in terms of maybe understanding why are we looking at these changes. So just, I guess, in plain and simple terms, in terms of life safety, if we're talking about how we go about building buildings in our community and how the emergency responder would respond to different buildings, why is that important? Give us a little bit more on that, Chief.
There's so many combinations of things that can go wrong in a building on a bad day, say a fire. Or any type of other, a natural driven event. And the code updates allow us to actually engineer those safety features into the building before it's ever built. And then that's pretty much the foundation of our community. Naturally, we're always going to be stuck with buildings that were built to substandard codes from years and years and years ago, way before 2003. But our hope is, especially with the way the construction industry is doing in Longview right now, is to try and engineer some of those more modern techniques into the buildings that are going to be here, 40, 50 years after we're all gone.
Right. That's important, like you said, for the people that maybe work or live inside those
Sure.
buildings, but also when you go to respond, if you have some of those safety features built into that structure from the very beginning.
Right, absolutely. I mean, from the firefighter perspective, we take those things into account. How well is the building built? How well do we trust the building to even risk ourselves, our personnel, to enter into that building to try and, save lives and property? Or is it a one-way ticket to a bad day? If the building's going to come down on top of your head, then we have to evaluate that case by case on every structure.
So let's talk a little bit about the process of where we are. You guys have already been meeting with a lot of the builders in town to make them aware of what kind of changes are being considered. What's the next step in this process?
Well, the next step, we're going to have a public hearing to present the code to our Construction Advisory and Appeals Board. They're the group that's appointed by City Council to hear variance requests and appeals with building and fire codes, as well as recommend changes in the building and fire code. So we're going to present that to them. We've presented it to them once to kind of kick off the process to let them know what we were evaluating. We have held a couple of community meetings. We've had meetings specifically at the Builders Association, individual builders we've met with and developers. as well as working with a consultant that came in and did some training on the residential side of things. But that's going to be the next step. And then once we get a recommendation from them and have that public input as well, then we plan to take that to City Council and present it to them and give them an opportunity to ask questions. And then we'll go back at a later date, later in the month of October, to do formal action and get a formal approval or formal action from council.
Very good. Now, if somebody wants to learn more, maybe they are thinking about building a house or maybe building something for their business or just doing a remodel, and they want to know, hey, what do I need to do to make sure my building is safe, make sure it's up to code? What's the best course of action? Is it just to contact your office?
Yes, they can contact Development Services, and they can ask to speak to me, and I'd be happy to visit with them. And if it's something that, if it's a detailed code question and I don't know it, we can get them the answer.
Very good. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for being with us today and talking about this. And hopefully, if people have any questions, they can get in touch. And if you'd like to learn more, we encourage you to go online to longviewtexas.gov. And there you can learn more information about the City of Longview in a variety of ways, including contact information for both the Development Services Department and the Fire Department. That's longviewtexas.gov. And thanks for joining us on this edition of Living in Longview.